collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up this week, have you registered as a beneficiary of the National Health Service, GESI? You should, and this week we find out how from the Acting Director of the Health Insurance Organisation.
There is two portals. It's the beneficiary portal. They will have to enter the beneficiary portal and register themselves and choose their family doctor.
We also discuss the circular economy and the particularities pertaining to islands.
You might know that in the all-inclusive hotels there is a per capita generation of 2 kilos of food waste per day, which mostly is not managed properly, and it is directed to landfills.
A couple of weeks ago, we spoke to our health minister about the rollout of GESI, the National Health Service in Cyprus. It's due to start on June the 1st. And I recently went to the Health Insurance Organisation to talk to the Acting Director General, Athos Tsinondidis, about how the rollout was going to take place. The relevant portal online is now live. It did have a few hiccups, I believe, but it's back up and running and people need to register. Some people perhaps aren't clear about exactly what is required, so I asked Athos to explain how they should proceed.
First of all, before a beneficiary will pick up or choose his personal doctor, has to enroll to the system. They have to enroll either by going into the internet and putting their credentials and enrolling themselves, or some relative of theirs to enroll them, or visit personal doctor where they will enroll in his list, and he or his secretary or her secretary enroll the person as a beneficiary.
Well, that's something that I had no idea about. I thought that since we all automatically started paying our contributions, a few weeks ago, that since you were taking the money from us, you'd automatically enrolled us in the system.
As a matter of fact, this was our goal. However, due to personal data protection issues, one has to choose to become a beneficiary. So by going into the internet and putting certain personal data, which is our name, our date of birth, and our ID, we can unlock ourselves and make ourselves a beneficiary.
So let's assume that within the coming days, everybody who feels that they should be a beneficiary, and I presume that everybody is entitled to be a beneficiary if they're paying their share, surely?
More or less, everybody is a beneficiary. If you are a Cypriot citizen, if you are a European citizen, if you are a citizen of a third country that resides in the non-occupied area of Cyprus, and you have certain status, you will be eligible to become a beneficiary.
So we've done that. Now we're waiting for the list of doctors and paediatricians, because then we have to go into the website again, I presume, and make a decision about which doctor we would like to register with. How can we find out a little bit more about these doctors, where they trained, when they graduated, things like that, which can make a difference?
Okay, before going to that, let me say that the reason that we have not invited people to become beneficiaries is that we would like to make sure that when they become beneficiaries, at the same time, they will be able to choose their personal doctor. So
you'd prefer us to wait to become beneficiaries until the list of doctors is up?
Exactly.
Okay, that's one visit less online.
Online.
But let's talk about people who
Yes.
aren't online, and then come back to how we're going to choose and find out more about our doctors. Because there are quite a few people, particularly perhaps in rural areas, older people, who are not really internet savvy. How are they going to register?
Okay, the people that are not very comfortable with using the electronic means and the internet, they can either refer to somebody that is in their family, either their children or somebody they know, or they can visit a personal doctor who they know that has enrolled as a personal doctor in the system and that they would like to enroll in their catalog. As a matter of fact, for other people that do not know at this point how to find a personal doctor, we will be able to release information besides visiting our website and besides calling the 1700 number, which is the contact center for any type of questions a beneficiary may have.
Stop there. If, let's say, I don't know, an old lady calls 1700, will she be able to say, this is my name, this is my ID, this is my address, please register me?
No, the contact center cannot register a beneficiary because, again, there is an issue with the personal data and we cannot release information online and over the telephone because the person on the other line doesn't know whether the person who says who he is or who she is actually who she is. So there is a lot of issues that have emerged nowadays, in our days, that people are very, very sensitive with their personal information, and we have to be very careful when and how we use it. So the contact center cannot register a person, but the contact center can provide information with regards to the general health scheme, with the
Can they give you the list of doctors in your area? If you say, I live in Strovolos, they can say, well, you can choose from these doctors.
As a matter of fact, if you know your postal code, the contact center can tell you the personal doctors that are in that area close to your address that you
And
live.
they'll do that by going online because we can do the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Now let's come to the thorny issue of the number of doctors, where they trained, and how we make our selection. People can be quite fussy about who they're going to take on as a family doctor. We don't have a history in Cyprus, at least until very recently, of general practitioners or family practitioners. And I know that there's been some training going on, but to cover the entire population, you need a lot of them.
Yes. First of all, let's say who can be a personal doctor or a family doctor. Or maybe let me make this distinction. We call them personal doctors because a family of three may have three different doctors as their personal doctor. So it's not a family doctor, but it's more a personal choice. So personal doctors can become pediatricians for children, then doctors that have a specialty in internal medicine, in general medicine, geriatrics, can become
GPs, family doctors.
Family doctors, plus a certain other number of doctors that have been practicing general medicine and according to European directive and our law are eligible to enroll as personal doctors or family doctors for people to choose. Now, we believe that Cyprus being a small place and a small society, most of the people will know the doctor that they would be interested to enroll in their list. Besides that, by visiting our website, as I said, they can find more information about this doctor. And we are working on other methods in order to communicate, especially to people that cannot visit the website and are not able, let's say, to call the contact center. We are looking to methods where we will publicize the doctors that they have enrolled as PDs in the system. As far as their qualifications, again, somebody on the internet, they can see what is their specialty of the doctor next to it, and they can at that point make a decision whether they would like to look up this doctor further again through the internet, not through the health insurance organization.
Right. There's one thing that has come up, I think, in the past, and that is the fact that, OK, suppose I sign on with Dr. whoever, and the first time I'm ill, I go and see him or her, and I really don't like them. I don't like their attitude. I don't like their, perhaps, propensity for distributing antibiotics or whatever it happens to be. I can't just change, can I? I have to be with them for 6 months before I can make a change.
Yes, for adults, you have to be with him for 6 months, him or her for 6 months. Of course, usually, in case that we choose somebody that we don't know already. And usually we don't choose somebody now and the next day we get sick and we go and we have this unhappy experience. So we believe that the period of the 6 months is a reasonable period. Just imagine, like in 20 years you will be able to change your family doctor 40 times. So it's a reasonable period, because we want you to give the doctor a second chance, maybe, and maybe the first impression was not always the best impression. So,
all right, that will no doubt sort of iron itself out, I guess, over the first year of implementation. But if we go back to this training, a lot of doctors, I think, have received a few weeks, is it, training? Or months. It's certainly not a full GP medical training course, and that's something else that's been in the press and people have expressed concern about, because family practitioner has to be very familiar with chronic conditions, for example, as you say, with possibly geriatrics and all of these things, which some specialist doctors in other areas, they'll have done their basic training possibly 20 years ago, but bringing them up to scratch on modern medicine for family practitioners surely takes more than a few weeks.
That's true, but let me say this. First of all, we are talking about less than 20% of the doctors that belong to this category.
But should they be classed in the same way as doctors who have undergone a full general practitioner training?
You will be able to see it on the internet that these people are people that they don't belong into the 3 previous categories, which is in general medicine, internal medicine, or the so-called pathologists that we say in Cyprus, or the pediatrician. They will be in a different category. But I need to say something about these people. I mean, first of all, the criterion in order to be able to follow this training is that you had to, at least in the last 10 years, be an active doctor with 6 consecutive years of practice of general medicine. So these are not people they have not been doing any medical work in the recent past, and these are people that they have been seeing and treating people day in and day out for the last 6 years. So what we believe is that since these people, they don't have the official specialty, and I have to underline that this training is not going to give them a specialty, it's going to make them eligible to become personal doctors in the system, and I believe that these people, they already have quite an extensive clientele right now, and possibly people that already know them, they will choose to continue with them. So I don't feel that they are people that are, let's say,
underqualified?
Underqualified. Obviously, it is a transitional period. We are going into a new system. Things will be, and let me say that this is the first and the last time that is being done. That is, the law says explicitly that for one time only this can happen, in order for these people not to just stay unemployed from one day to the other, since we are introducing this radical healthcare reform. But as from this point on, a personal doctor has to have the specialties that we mentioned earlier in order to become a personal doctor.
And finally, Have you got enough doctors to cover the population of Cyprus in all areas? Because again, it seems that I've been reading that particularly in the east of the island, there could be a little bit of an understaffing.
No, the distribution of the people that have, of the doctors that have showed interest is relatively normally distributed according to the population of the different districts. But we should point out that in rural areas where there is, obviously there may not be any doctors at all, we have to say that the public health centers will remain operational in order to cover the population of the rural areas if they choose not to choose somebody from the urban areas.
So they could register at their local clinic?
Yes, at the public health center.
Let's hear the website so that people can prepare themselves when they need to go in and put their name down and choose a doctor. Where should they go?
They have to visit the HIO website, which is the www.gesy.org.cy. This is the website of the Health Insurance Organization. There is two portals. It's the beneficiary portal. They will have to enter the beneficiary portal and register themselves and choose their family doctor.
Is it in more languages than just Greek?
And English.
So there you have it, www.gesy.org.cy, since the National Health Service Phase 1 rolls out on June the 1st. Our thanks to Athos Tsinondidis, who is the Acting Director General of the Health Insurance Organisation. Well, that chat about our National Health Service took place a couple of weeks ago. Yesterday, I went back to speak to Athos Tsinondidis because the system went live, as we mentioned. There were a few glitches, but I think they've been sorted out now, and he's going to tell us how it's up and running. Athos, welcome back. Now, there were some glitches. I think it was really a technological thing, wasn't it? But
yes.
Do just tell us what's happening.
Actually, as a matter of fact, yesterday was the big day. There was great interest from the beneficiaries to enroll in the system. That is why there was this technical problem with our website. Currently, we have a new page where the people can visit. It's at the same address at the www.gesy.org.cy, and concurrently the beneficiaries can also visit directly the portal. The portal is at the address of https://portal.gesy.org.cy, where they can submit their application to enroll in the system. We hope that soon everything will be back as originally designed.
So it was high traffic, basically, that crashed the website?
The high traffic crashed the website, but things are moving smoothly now.
Right, now then let's come to a couple of glitches that apply specifically to foreigners in Cyprus. I've spoken to a couple of them, and they tried to register, and they get error messages that it doesn't recognise them as who they say they are, and they're getting very frustrated. What do they do?
Yes, there are many different categories of beneficiaries, and we have tried to make all these different combinations in the system so that people that are eligible can proceed to enroll. We would like to say that in case somebody belongs to a beneficiary eligibility category, for instance, MEU3.
That's a permanent resident of Cyprus, but a foreign national. Okay,
yes.
Just to clarify for those who don't know.
We ask that they don't, if the system does not recognize them, they should not try to choose a different way around in order to submit their application. Let's say they should not try to choose a family member of a beneficiary, but they should contact the HIO contact center at the number 17000 so that we can proceed with and help them and make any corrections needed at the data warehouse or the alien registration department so that they have the correct status of the beneficiary in the system.
Let's get this very clear, because certainly earlier in the week, if you called that number you gave, you just got a message saying, we're far too busy, call back later, so nothing happened. And people find that frustrating. But you're saying basically that if you get an error message and you think you've done everything correctly, you do need to keep trying to phone that number. Can they go in person somewhere to say to somebody, this does not work for me? Because again, people who have a specific doctor they want to register with are probably getting worried that he may fill up before they actually manage to get this sorted out. But you're saying that if you are, for example, MEU3, do not, under any circumstances, try and bypass the system by saying you're something else just to get in to register.
That's very true. You should not try to bypass the system, because we need to have a correct system, because there may be changes in your status while you are registered in the system, and these changes may affect your eligibility. Whereas if you are under the correct status in the system, then as far as we know, if changes occur, things will go smoothly and there will be no problems in your eligibility in the future.
So you're talking there about changes to your status on the island. For example, if you've applied for citizenship and you're currently on an MEU3, it would automatically update it further down the line if you've gone in with the right qualifications now.
Correct.
I think we've sorted it out. I hope we have. We've been talking to Athos Tsinondidis, the acting director of the Health Insurance Organisation, and they were up and running this week, and they're busy trying to iron out those glitches.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
George Kremlis is president of the organising committee Circle 2019. He's also an honorary director at the European Commission. And he joins us to tell us what Circle 2019 is.
Circle 2019 is a circular economy conference in connection with the insularity, namely the specificities of the islands, Cyprus being an island state, but also the islands of the Mediterranean and the other islands of the European Union, which, because of the insularity, face specific problems.
Like what?
Vulnerability in terms of climate change, which might lead, or is already leading, to water scarcity, desertification, to floods and other extreme weather phenomena, which leads also, because of the distance, to high costs of transport, lack of economies of scale, or let's say lack of resources that are needed, which have to be transported with high cost, and of course the seasonality of tourism, which means that climate and environmental footprint during the summer season, the high season, is such that the islands, I'm referring not only to Cyprus, but more specifically to small islands which do not have the capacity in terms of managing their wastewater, providing drinking water, managing their solid waste, or the waste that is generated from the hotels. I mean, you might know that in the all-inclusive hotels there is a per capita generation of 2 kilos of food waste per day, which mostly is not managed properly, and it is directed to landfills, or sometimes even to illegal landfills, whereas food waste, for which there is a sustainable development goal to halve it by 2030, food waste is a resource that can produce biogas, biofuels, and very high quality compost, but also food for animals, feed. And all these possibilities are highlighted under circular economy and can be exploited and can lead to new businesses and to green jobs that can be connected to these activities.
So how do you get that message across to people on the islands? Because there are so many opportunities to make good use of that waste that will benefit the entire population. And because they're small, surely it's quite easy to get that message across, but it doesn't seem to be being implemented.
Yes, one thing is to be able to explain the narrative, because the narrative is really very, very attractive. But of course, this requires often a political will, which sometimes is lacking even at the level of the island states, but also at the micro level of the small islands, which have a small municipality and the mayor there. So one thing is the political, let's say, will to do things. The other thing is the communication. How do you explain this? How do you create this business culture, but also this civil society culture for these things to happen? And of course, last but not least, for me, this is the most important, green entrepreneurship. How we can support young people or small companies to be developed, SMEs, to let's say to be set up with startups, for example, that can be supported by EU funds or specific programs that will start developing ideas and projects on all the circular economy issues. For example, collect recyclables at source, clean recyclables that are automatically products. They are not waste anymore, so they don't need to be treated and managed. They can be exported directly as a resource. They can be used by the local industry, handicraft or whatever, to produce other products. How can we use the sludge from the wastewater treatment plants is to be treated as a resource. Sludge, if there are no heavy metals, and I expect that in the islands there are no heavy metals. Of course, this is something to be checked. Sludge as a resource can produce good quality compost, but can also, through an anaerobic digestion, produce biogas. So
there
another
are lots
example,
of possibilities.
Lots of possibilities to manage all what was considered as waste in the past as a resource.
Now,
and this is the message of circular economy.
The one thing that does strike me is that on small islands, and for example, a lot of the Greek islands are pretty small, is it feasible to have the infrastructure of, for example, a water treatment plant? Because when you have economies of scale, the input in terms of infrastructure is often not financially viable.
Yeah. Your question is very relevant. The legal obligation is for agglomerations between 2,000 and 10,000 population equivalent, which means that islands having less than 2,000 are not legally required under EU law to have sewerage and wastewater treatment plants. But instead, of course, they need to have small installations in the households where waste will be disposed, of course, wastewater. So the legislation applies for agglomerations of over 2,000, but what happens in small islands is that often an island of 150 people in the winter, in the summer, can host 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and that creates a real problem which needs to be faced. Now, there are some compact wastewater treatment plants that can be transported and can be connected and can operate during the summer period. So there are solutions practically on everything. One needs to know them, and of course one needs to have the available funds and possibly the private sector being involved in a PPP, private-public partnership with the local authorities to activate such initiatives.
And that is George Charalambous, President of the Organising Committee Circle 2019 and Honorary Director at the European Commission. Well, that about wraps it up for this week. There'll be no programme next week, as it's Easter weekend this week and, of course, several days of holiday at the beginning of next week. Let me just wish you, wherever you are, if you're celebrating, a very happy Easter. See you in a couple of weeks. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.